investigated these instances that it was African Americans who were in some way competing with white businesses, usually for black business. It was the wealthy and prominent African Americans were the ones who were victimized by white terrorism. And the Black Wall Street in Oklahoma, in Tulsa, Oklahoma, was destroyed by white mob violence, etc. And because it was so successful, and they were jealous, and they was competitive, and so they said we would go and wipe it out. And this racial cleansing, there's a book on racial cleansing that occurred in the United States that is reviewed in the special issue. So this racial cleansing took place on a regular basis, and this is another reason for and Rosewood, and and various other places where this racial cleansing took place. And it's another reason why you had this disparity in wealth for the African American population. And so Rosewood, the victims, African American victims in Rosewood, when they investigated and made reparations demands, they were given some kind of reparations demand, just like the Japanese Americans. They were in Tulsa, where you had all of this evidence, and John Hope Franklin, his father was a lawyer, and his business was destroyed in the riot in Tulsa in 1921. And John Hope Franklin testified at the investigating commission in Oklahoma about the riot in 2000, and demonstrating talking about what his father lost as a result of the mob violence. And they refused to bring them any kind of reparations. And so the National African American Commission on Reparations has put forward the proposal that President Barack Obama, before he leaves office, creates a John Hope Franklin Commission on Reparatory Justice that would be similar to the Race Relations Commission that Bill Clinton created in the late 1990s, and John Hope Franklin was the head of that commission to investigate. And so that's one of the demands that's being put forward by the Institute for the Black World, because John Hope Franklin became, really one of the spokespersons for, and he was one of the leading scholars, in the United States, and headed the Clinton Race Relations Commission in the 1990s. And so the Institute for the Black World put forward that Barack Obama should create a similar commission before he leaves the presidency and name it in honor of John Hope Franklin. Yeah?
You mentioned about Jim Crow and segregation. Could you explain what was the wealth of the Africans before segregation and what happened after?
Right. The Jim Crow came in the 1890s. And one of the reasons why the legal segregation was put into effect was because of the advancements that African Americans had made from emancipation through the 1880s. And they were beginning to accumulate wealth, to build homes, to acquire land. And in many places, they were beginning to acquire skills. And they were beginning to compete with the southern white population. And the excuse that was used for the implementation of the Jim Crow, was political. They said, well, they are, because blacks were in political office, and they were using their political office to try to protect these advances that African Americans made in the 1870s, 1880s, despite the violence and terrorism, the Ku Klux Klan, and all of that. And they were making these advancements, but at the same time, they were using the political process to protect these advances that they were making. And so you had a situation where, with the rise of the Populist Party in the United People's Party, the Farmers' Party. Farmers were being jacked up by the monopoly capitalists, so they created the People's Party, and it was a large political party, that third party in the United States that was challenging the Democrats and the Republicans, and was winning elections in state after southern state and in the Midwest, et cetera. And the populists appealed to black voters. And they were put in place. They removed Democrats from office in various southern states through this fusion of black and white voters. And so what happened was the Democratic Party went on and said, okay, we got to get rid of we got to reform this process, and we can't have two white competing for the black vote. And so what we'll do is eliminate the black vote. And once they eliminated the black vote, then they put into effect, and they had already begun to put into effect this legal segregation, this apartheid in the United States, and it just became pro forma. And each of the southern states then passed this legislation calling for separation of the races from cradle to grave. And it was then agreed to by the Supreme Court in 1896. And so this is really from the 1890s to 1954 that you had this legal separation of races, and it was basically because of the competition that African Americans were giving to whites, particularly poor whites in the United States.
But doesn't that show the tenacity of the Africans?
Oh yes. Oh
even
yeah.
under segregation, they still were doing better.
Oh yes.
They started to do, from what I researched, they started to do a lot better then.
Yes.
Because obviously they were within their own thing, their own universities, hospitals. They were creating a whole lot of things. That's what led to Tulsa.
Right. Exactly. That's what.
Because it's under that they were able to.
Right, and there's all these arguments about the advantages and disadvantages of integration.
Right, and
in the United States.
I want to point out is land ownership. African Americans had between 10 and 13 million acres of land that they accumulated on their own. And I don't know, maybe 30 or 40 years ago, it was down to 3 million acres that they've taken, the rest of it taken away from them. And as somebody who came from a land-based family in Florida and Alabama and places like that, I can speak to that personally, that the land that was taken away from my own family over the course of time, by violence or whatever it is. So we talked about wealth. In the United States, land is like, it's, well, everywhere really, but at that point in time, the kind of land that these people have accumulated, African Americans all over the place, it's priceless. There's no.
So let me ask a question then. So within the Africans in America, represented to create this reparation movement that they have, isn't it? Couldn't that be factored in the reparatory justice? In fact, like what you're trying to do.
Oh yes. Oh yeah. Oh, that's that would be in one of the 10-point program. That would be one of and Jessica. And some of you were at this panel with Jessica Gordon Nembhard, where she gave a presentation on cooperative movements among African Americans from the 19th century all the way up to the present. And she has been working with various black cooperatives today. And she is going to be, she has agreed to submit, as one of the 10-point programs, how this land, how southern land banks can be created through reparations fund to help blacks acquire more land throughout the South, but do it in a cooperative fashion, not through a capitalist, not for profit, but through a cooperative effort. So that's going to be one of the issues that's going to be raised about what should be included in the 10-point program for African Americans. That is, so using reparations funds to support communally owned, to support cooperative economic enterprises for African Americans, not necessarily for-profit capitalistic economic enterprises.
Last question. The United States government is still doing that type of stuff. I mean, you know this, well, obviously you must know this working in Atlanta with Dr. Malachi York, where they bulldozed the land that they had, and they've taken. What's the news on that?
Well, I'm not sure what the latest on it, but this is not unusual in terms of them confiscating and developing legal strategies to try to dispossess African Americans. I'm not sure specifically what happened in that instance, but I'm saying that this dispossession of African Americans' land is targeting for dispossession. It's been a part of state policy, local policy, and in some instances federal policy. And so that is in some ways explains the decrease in the amount of land that African Americans have control. But I wanted to mention this thing about integration. And because there's this debate about whether or not integration was a good thing or a bad thing, and they say, oh, we had all these things about integration and stuff. And it seems to me that the evidence would suggest that integration is a good thing because we have access to all of these other institutions in the society. But also having voluntary separation and having our own institution is also a good thing. And that we need to preserve, and that reparations would be created in order to, used in order to maintain black controlled institutions. I published a book in 1984 called Black Self-Determination, A Cultural History of the Faith of the Fathers. I published that in 1984. And so I have been writing about self-determination, self-determinist activities among African Americans. And I was almost driven out of the historical profession at the time for putting black self-determination on the table in 1984. And I have managed to fall back, from that trying to question it. But this is part of the core cultural value system of African Americans that they developed because they were excluded. Because they were excluded from the institutions of the larger society. So we had to create these black controlled institutions. But at the same time, they knew that they were citizens and they had the right to be included in the institutions of the larger society and to have access to those resources. So so in this 50 years or 60 years now since the Brown decision, it's clear that the Brown decision was important in terms of allowing African Americans to have access to these institutions in the larger society and not be segregated, not to be victimized by apartheid in the society. But at the same time, they need their own institutions where they control and we determine, what is best for our present and our future. And that's one of the objectives, for example, in terms of the 10-point program. So that we would make the decisions about how we would use the reparations funds. And we're demanding them from people and institutions and corporations that have damaged us in the past, and we can document that.
Sorry.
And let her, and then we'll come back, okay? Yes. Oh, okay.
Yeah, the situation with the city of Philadelphia, which was a high population of African Americans, would you, I got these conspiracy theories. Would you say that was a conspiracy to destabilize Africans in that area for specific reason?
I'm from Philadelphia. I'm from Philadelphia, and the problem is that there was this question that was raised about the other day about whether or not the elites would be the ones who may betray the movement and actually collaborate with the oppressor because of the resources and stuff that they may have access to, given access to it, so they do it. But this can also be the problem with the grassroots too. And so we know that as your colleague and stuff pointed out, that there's evidence of that, across the board. And in Philadelphia, the incident that we associate with this problem of the leaders, the elite leaders and stuff, doing more damage than the white leaders had done in the past, and why is this the case, was the MOVE incident, when they bombed They bombed the homes of the MOVE group in West Philadelphia, and this was a black mayor dropped a bomb on the black group in West Philadelphia. And so that is an example of how elites and stuff can do damage and stuff. But we also know that there can be betrayal at the grassroots level. And so that in Philadelphia, right now, they no longer have a black mayor. There are all of these problems in terms of the schools, the public schools, because they don't want to fund the public schools. Because the whites have moved into private schools and into the suburbs, and so they don't want to fund the public schools. So the public schools, each year there's a threat that public schools, because are predominantly black, are going to make it to the end of the school year in terms of funding. And so this is where, and so the charter school movement has moved in, where you have these entrepreneurs, these educational entrepreneurs, want to make money on opening up schools for lower income children, particularly in these urban areas, and make a profit off of it. And if they are unsuccessful in improving the academic achievement of these children in these schools that they opened up to make a profit on, then they may be kicked out of that particular district, and they move on to the next city and do the same thing. And so it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other in terms of the situation for African Americans in Philadelphia. They made a lot of advancements, but at the same time, the African Americans in Philadelphia are facing the same kinds of problems, gentrifications, of their neighborhoods and stuff, in Philadelphia and these other large cities, and being driven out because of the high mortgage rates and the high cost of purchasing homes in these areas after they've been gentrified. And so that's why reparations, that's why a 10-point program for African Americans in the United States would attempt to address, say, this is what we would use the reparations fund to do, to try to improve the situation. Okay.
Yeah. And I just wanted to say one other thing, because I think it's important you brought it up. For all of you, just for your information in the future, there's an area of scholarship or history of African Americans that you might want to look at that's little mentioned. And that is the movement of founding black towns and black settlements. There were hundreds, nearly thousands of all black towns and settlements that were set up in the United States certainly after the Civil War, and some of them that are still there now. You know Mount Bayou, Mississippi, of course, this is an important town. And then there are other places like San Diego, California, and so on and so forth. So people were moving around, and they were forming some official towns with city statutes, and others were settlements, just big settlements of African Americans. These people owned the land there in these settlements. So I think it's very crucial for you to understand that. And we talk about reparations, and the focus is on cities and what's happening in the cities. The people are in the cities because they lost their land, because they were chased away from their lands and by various means and so on. So the lynching, the movement to the cities, the problems in the urban areas for African Americans, they're not unrelated. Okay, so we can't talk about one without talking about the other. There's a historical link of why people were there. When you're pushed off the land, these settlements were destabilized and broken up purposely, then people had to leave, and the men particularly go and try to find work in Chicago or Philadelphia and other places of that nature. So I think it's very crucial for people to know that, because the narrative for African Americans is always stuck in the cities, and that's where our narrative begins as far as many people are concerned. It's like it just begins in slavery. But it's crucial to know about the self-determination that happened with African Americans even before slavery was over, but certainly right after slavery. And some of those towns are still there. I mean, in 2013, I found out that my own family founded one of those towns, the first black town in Alabama. And it's not the town you hear about. So anyway, I just...
Those still exist with ethnic group that's at the not boiling down the landlords.
Black people.
So there's still black people in black towns in America.
Yes, I mean, now there are other people there.
So they're more diverse now.
Well, they're not.
A little bit.
Sort of, right. but they're still predominantly black towns. And people understand that. It's just like the predominantly black colleges and universities that were set up, okay?
So I think that's important to understand, because I don't think we should go away with this notion of deficit that African Americans have, you know, that our history is a deficit history. You know, it's a lofty history, you know, of accomplishments and black self-determination from the Seminole Wars all the way to what's happening today. So when we just leave the scholarship at the cities and what's happening in the cities, it's like we cut off the root and now we're looking at branches of the tree and so on. But Madam,
May I add on to that just before you go to, the oldest black town is in my state, Princeville, North Carolina, which was 1865, before my which is in Mississippi.
right. Well, Edenville, people who are in literature know about Thurman Hurston's Edenville,
Yeah,
which is there. But the town that I'm talking about, Hobson City, Alabama, comes right after that. Okay? So, Madam, please, thank you.
Okay. My question was, it really draws on some of the points you're making. Some of the points, you just mentioned lynching, and my question was, is there traction with an organisation like the Equal Justice Initiative, whose focus has been on this kind of internal terrorism and wants to document all of these areas where lynching happened, and I know they had some opposition to sort of creating a map to sort of identify, because I think it speaks to the point that Joyce just made in terms of why did people move. And I raise that point because over here what has been quite important for other people, not for all of us, but because some of us already had that knowledge, but the legacies of slavery database is documented where all the compensation payments were made. And so you have a map. And then sometimes just to be able to look at textually, because otherwise people believe visually that all of the gain was in one particular area. But people being able to look at this narrative across the whole of the UK, it doesn't allow people to sort of exclude themselves as well in my area. So this, I understood that the Equal Justice Initiative was trying to have a way to map out these areas where the lynchings happened. And if you could imagine what that's going to look like visually across America, would speak to that narrative of people being moved from countries into cities and into the areas that you described as manifestation of what we're looking at now.
Yeah, well, that was the origins of the NAACP. That when we look at the NAACP started in 1909. One of their first was to investigate these lynchings and mob action. So their first major publication, which came out in 1921, was called 30 Years of Lynching in the United States. And they then mapped out where they investigated these lynchings and who was lynched, and then the causes. And that's why we know from these investigations that it didn't have to do anything to do with raping white women, which was used as the excuse, and they showed the causes in each one of these and provided and presented the statistics to show what was the events, et cetera, that precipitated this mass violence and these lynchings. All right, then it was sort of like a lull in terms of lynching research, but more recently, there have been this mapping of the lynching. There have been at least 10, 15 major studies done to document lynching state by state. And most of that is in the South. But as I mentioned earlier, you also had the racial cleansing that took place all throughout the United States. And this is where, and there's a phenomenon known in the United States as sundown towns. Sundown towns. Anybody know what the sundown towns were? Yeah. Okay, this is, African Americans had to be out of the town by sundown. And so they've been investigations of towns in the Midwest, in the Northwest, in California, in the Northeast, where were sundown towns. When you had the suburbanization of the United States took place beginning in the post-World War II period. Right. They created these suburbs in all of these different places that excluded African Americans. So that these, in effect, where blacks could come in and work, in these suburbs. Levittown is the most notorious example of this. And we had Levittown in New Jersey, Pennsylvania, New York, and blacks were prohibited from living there, but they could come there and work, so that they would be sundown towns. And then also there's a review of the book on sundown towns in that special issue. And then in the special issue, there's a review of the book on racial cleansing. And the racial cleansing was where you had these towns where these cities and these towns where they decided that they wanted the land, they wanted the property, they wanted whatever it was that African Americans had in that town, and then they decided to create mob bombs and go in and wipe out African Americans and steal everything that they had, their furniture, their clothes, and they had to flee with just whatever they had on their backs. And so this racial cleansing that took place, and it's a review, the book on racial cleansing is reviewed in the special issue. This racial cleansing was predominantly in the Midwest, Illinois, Indiana, Wisconsin. I mean, where you had these instances of racial cleansing taking place. And I do want to point out that what was really interesting to me when I had people review the book on sundown towns, for example, and the book on racial cleansing, these were white scholars who did the research, who went and tracked these things down. African Americans had been saying, this happened to me, this happened to my family, this, but it's only when white scholars find the exact same evidence that the black people had been saying existed all along, that it gained credibility in the scholarly community. But those books are reviewed in the special issue.
So can I just say,
Can you stand up, please, so your voice?
No, just a comment on voices and power, and that's an example, I think, of academic apartheid.
Yes.
It's like
Right.
one set of people will say something that's completely valid in a lived experience and very real, and then it's completely ignored. And then when there's money in it, and only when there's money in it, it's almost like the industrialization of our genocide on every level. So that point, I think, is really, really.
Oh yes, so this is a regular thing. We, as historians, as African American historians, we do this research, and publish these books and publish these articles and have debates at the association conference meeting every year. A white scholar replicates what we did. What the black scholars have been doing all along, have been debating all along. National Book Award, the American, AOA, the American Historical Association Review Award, and all this, and this upsets us, because we say that they aren't saying anything new, and then they proceed to think that they're the expert on these topics when we have been writing about these and publishing these things all along. I mean, this is a pattern that exists in the United States.
We're going to listen to Lucy, and while she's coming up, I just wanted to comment, just to go back on what you were saying. We showed a film the other night called Traces of the Trade. I don't know, maybe at least a decade prior to that, there was a documentary made by an African American woman called The Door of No Return. Mm-hmm. Traces the same thing. Some of you may have seen it. The film never got any traction. It never got any public review or whatever. But she traced the same thing, and it was more powerful because she talked to local people like the elders of Ghana and so on and so forth around the castle. They had their stories to tell about what they had learned, which this lady couldn't get because they wouldn't talk to them. She said that. And so the stories from the elders about what they believe, what happened to the people according to you, and the elders had their commentary. They're stuck, they said, in the White Man's Land. So this doesn't come out in Traces of the Trade because they wouldn't be, they wouldn't going to tell them that. So anyhow, I know this, we're going to continue this, but we are going to hear from Lucy, who has a study to present to us that my colleague, Nicola, was working on, and we do want to see what she's working on because it all ties in with what we're doing. So if you come up and go over that.
Thank you very much for your time.
Do you need smoke? Oh, okay. Sarah will help.
journals,
Oh, we need to collect the journals and the literature, okay.
What'd you say? Just one more? Okay. You want to give you the kids?
Thanks so much. Have a safe trip.
Okay, thank you.
So my name is Lucy, sorry I'll try to speak loud, but with the weather in Edinburgh and my voice today, I think I'm going to be getting cold quite soon. So I'm a project research assistant for a project that we've been doing with Nico and Fred, who was the primary investigator of an art and humanity research council funding, which is called, our project is called Mapping Memories of Slavery, Commemoration, Community and Identity in Contemporary France. So yeah, we're focusing basically on activist groups and citizen-led groups, associations that are focusing on the slave trade and the slavery that's being led by European countries. So the aim of the project are to investigate the emergence of memories of slavery through the French Republic that started mostly during the 150th anniversary of the abolition of slavery in 1998. We're focusing particularly on the group of activists that are trying to bring commemoration or reparation, working on memory, and trying to bring the stage to get more recognition of the slave past. Sorry, my voice is already breaking. And we're trying to question also how and actually if all these actions that have been either made by the state or the association have actually had an impact on wider problems that exist in French society, like racial discrimination, inequality, and things like that. So one of the key outputs of this project was that we created a website that is kind of putting together all the associations and cultural institutions, citizen-led groups that are, trying to tackle the work on memory of the slave trade. So I'm gonna, basically what I'm gonna do is gonna just show you the website and kind of talk you through it, because this website is quite particular. It's the first time that this body of information has been brought together. So you're gonna see for the first time our work. So I have to point out that this site is in construction. We've been trying our best to have something good to present to you. But it's probably going to be officially launched in May 2016. For the moment, that's what we have. So it's called Mapping Memories of Slavery. And there's different functions to it. First of all, I'm going to take you through the homepage, talk through the primary, the three key objectives of this website, which are there. So explore the rich diversity of activism relating to the legacies of slavery from political, cultural, and social perspectives. It has a fully searchable database of citizen-led projects, activist groups, associations, and institutions operating within the French Republic and its overseas partner in the Caribbean and the Indian Ocean, and the interactive map of their activities. And yeah, the aim is to create a virtual community of activism connected by the desire to fight against racism and racial discrimination in contemporary society. So in the map, what is shown is the different cluster of associations here in Caribbean, in France, in the Indian Ocean, and also the sites of memory. So whenever like an association that tried to, I don't know, like to construct a statue or something like that, we have these sites of memories. And the action that is being taken, for example, you know that, sorry, I can speak English today. For example, when they brought a case to court again, like, you know, discrimination and things like that, all the, what the association have done. So I'm going to take you, for example, so you can see like, for example, there in France, that's the association, it represents the association. You can see there's got a lot of them around like the Ile-de-France region in Paris, and also in Nantes and Bordeaux, which are big like slave trade ports. I'm going to pick, for example, in Paris to try to show you how the map works. So all these pieces of things there are association, that's the sign for it. And there is a lot more in Paris. You can click more and more to check where they are. For example, there, we have like one page in French, which, yeah, I forgot to mention this important point, it's bilingual website. So it's in French and in English. So this is like the page in French, this is the page in English. So if you click there, it's going to bring you to the page, show you exactly where it is on the map, and show you where it is like on a broader level. And yeah, it has a lot of information about who created the association, when it was declared, their email address if you want to contact them, their statutes. There's also a type, like what they focus on, like defense of citizen rights, social justice, the historiography, and their objectives. So yeah, that's it. If you want to change it to French, you can read it in French as well. So it's like double, like bilingual pages. I'm going to show you another page now in Martinique. From the France. Again, a page in English and a page in French. I'm going to go to the English one and show you how the association link to actions. Because many associations have undertaken actions, like you can see there. So court summons, court cases, and they all the time linked also to other associations. They had that link, for example, I've undertaken an action with other association, you're going to see that they link to them. So if I click on an action, you got more details of what happened, and you've got the type, and you've got the outcome. So you can see there, for example, that this case is still ongoing. Sometimes we're going to tell you if it's resolved, if it's like, yeah, if it's got any compensation and things like that. Yeah, so basically that's it. Like that's the kind of interactive map, like the part of it. There is also a search function. So basically with that, you can enter keywords if you do have no search. Easier. Enter keywords because associations, sites of memories are not just grouped together by tags, they're also grouped together by keywords. So for example, if you want to link with an association that focuses on reparation, an association that focuses on commemoration, you can just type those keywords and see what kind of activities you have around you or association you want to contact that actually are dealing with what you would be interested in. I'm going to look, for example, a site of memory in Scoiales, in France. So you can just type your keyword. You're looking for a site of memory, and you want it to be in English. So there you go. You go to Stele to honor the slave ancestors in Scoiales. This one's got a feature in the map as well, so you can see actually where it is. so it's there, Saint-Denis in France. Tells you who the artist is, where you can find it, who you can contact to talk about this. Yeah, and you've got associations that are linked to it, so they're usually associations who made a demand for a monument to be created. Yeah, so that's it. You've got lots of keywords as well, which I was telling you about. If you're looking for any associations and memories that are linked to commemorations, you just type the keyword commemoration, and there you go. You've got the association that are focusing on that. So yeah, you've got quite a lot of that. So yeah, I think this website is quite important because I guess that we always have this impression that associations are just, on their own and doing their own things, but I think this map kind of shows quite a lot that there's quite a lot of association grouped together in certain points geographically, and that are also sharing quite a lot of common points, like, as I say, focusing on commemoration, focusing on reparations. So it's a good tool for researchers or academics to use and try and, maybe enter in contact with association to try and see what kind of association deal with what. Of course, this is not finished at all. We still need to add a few functionalities. Yeah, as I said, it's going to be launched probably in May 2016, and we're going to try and extend that to more things. But for the moment, it's just French Republic, Caribbean, and Indian Ocean, all the other city department. But we're trying to expand that and hopefully, make it quite big. So that's it basically. I don't know if you have any questions. I'll try and answer my best. I'm the research assistant, but Nikki can't be there unfortunately. But I can pass around things if I can't answer any questions or if you've got any feedback about this map, about this website, about what you think about it, and if you think there's something that can be added and whatever. Just yes.
On the
Can you stand up, please? Please.
On the sites, this is very interesting. I commend you for taking on this task. The sites that you currently have, are you doing these only in target areas, or are you looking globally for people to send information or contact you? How do you determine?
I forgot to actually mention the methodology. There's two sides of it. First of all, Nicola, who's the project investigator, has been conducting interviews with the association and members of committees. So she's been gathering all this information. The second part is that we have been going through the Journal Officiel, which is a French website, which you just look for all the associations that relate to slavery, slave trade, memory. It can even be, a group of a theater company who's trying to just put together plays, and it's quite broad, but it always has something to do with, a memory of slavery. So we've been looking through this information. If we couldn't get much, we would try to contact people. But I have to say, in 1998, during the 150th anniversary of the abolition of slavery, a lot of associations were created. You can see in 1988, so many are on the Journal Officiel, and you just lose track of them because they didn't really, they were just kind of arrived and then they stopped all their activities. So we couldn't find much. So we're trying to put them there anyway. But it's actually quite interesting to see how there was such a wave of associations being created that year because of this anniversary that just disappeared there. We don't know what happened. So that's how we did that. Through the Journal Officiel mostly, interviews, that's how we gathered information. Nicola was mostly focusing in France and the other city departments, but we're trying to maybe expand that to the Anglophone world as well. Sorry, I'm going to take this.
Thanks. Sorry, I think it makes time. I was when you were saying earlier. I want to also commend you for your work. I actually do some similar work in mapping street slavery, but where we actually look more at the historical locations and the stories that are connected, and trying to sort of
make it more tangible or make it like public history. And we do have some sites of memorialization, but very few actually. We're more focusing on history. So first of all, we should talk. But what I was wondering about, how did it start for you as a team? This whole project, what was sort of the incentive?
Did you start? Sorry.
What was the incentive to start this whole project?
Oh yeah, that's probably one more question for Nikki. Because yeah, she's been working on it probably for 3 years. I joined in May to try and help with the whole website and transcribing interviews and everything. Nikki's been like working like on like colonization and slavery studies for such a long time. Yeah, I don't know exactly what is the motive, like personal motive for her to do this, but I know she's been interested in that for a very long time. For the map anyway, like I think like the goal is twofold. Like first of all, trying to just make it easy to look for association and for sites of memories. And it's also I think France, there is quite of a division between the state and the association, see like the association is just asking for reparation, and there's lots of misunderstanding about what reparations mean. So lots of people think about financial reparation as like you have to pay an individual or something like that. And there's also moral reparation, as they call them, a commemoration. So I think there's lots of division and misunderstanding. And association feel that probably, on the side and like on their own. And this map is kind of to show, in a non-cheesy way, you're not alone. There's like a lot of, there's a lot of actual, like, instead of talking about association in terms of division, talk to them in terms of network. Because like, you're there is keywords between you, there is like different association related to each other because they've been working on the same action, they've been working on the same site of memory. So it's kind of to show, instead of division, to show, connection between the association. I think it would be good for the association, for researchers, for academics, to kind of just show that,
Because you are connecting different worlds to each other.
Exactly.
Are you going to launch it then also in France at some time? And how are you going to go about that?
Yeah, we're thinking of doing that around like May because it's such an important date with the commemoration on the 10th of May and the 23rd of May. There's always like the commemoration of the abolition of slavery. So we're trying to be like, I put a symbolic date to launch it. So it's probably going to have, probably going to be launched as well in France. And anyway, we're trying to really make it like French and English because obviously Nikki has been talking to so many members of the association that speak French, and we're quite, can we not know about it and stuff? And say, sure, it's going to be in French, you're going to be able to know about it and see what we've done with your entities. So thank you. That's very interesting.
Hi, thank you. I'm really impressed with the use of the tech. Again, I'm a bit curious about the map. We'd like to see maybe Polynesia issues and maybe
What?
Polynesia, French Polynesia,
Right.
and French Africa, all the countries that France covers.
Yeah.
The extent to which there's networks in those places that would support the pattern of the voice.
Yeah.
Just an idea.
No, it's great. No, we're definitely
The
going
global
to
pattern.
So we're trying to extend it. We've been so rushed. We just wanted to have something slightly decent to show, but it's definitely on the cards. Like,
Do you think so? Do you think there'll be a need to support for this kind?
Yeah. I mean, we're trying to extend the map to, definitely, like, as much as we can, like, just really trying to expand the map to more countries and, hopefully as well, even, Anglophone world and things like that. So, it's definitely a work in progress.
I think it'd be outstanding, Tunisia, really French Guiana.
We actually have something.
I know that Nikki has talked to me about some of the connections I have in Africa, West Africa, because she does want to expand into that area. So that's where we've sort of been talking about some of the places that I know in West Africa. So she is looking for that. If you know of the networks enough, that
community-based grassroots perspective, we advocate to power to government. Your comment on lots of community-based, or I don't know the adjective you used to describe the agencies on the ground during the 150th anniversary.
Yeah.
That's indicative of something, because there'll be seed money or there'll be time money that's unsustainable when things arise. You say you're putting them anyway. If you've got them anyways that you know away, giving the impression of activity when there's not, because what the system does is it allows, when there's a lot of pressure, almost like a concession to be seen to be doing something without sustainable funding. And so to represent that on the map gives a message of activity where there's none. Yes, the system won't allow it because it's not sustained. So that's just looking from our perspective.
Yeah.
The launch, I think, is very important. I don't know how that's going to be managed, because if it's in English as well as in French, France is a very short distance for us if you're not on the train. And I think a lot of grassroots agencies would be very keen to be able to watch it to know the physical one. Does that make sense to you? Okay. The launch that you're planning on the 10th or the 23rd of May.
Yeah.
Quite significant.
Yeah.
If an invitation could be extended to grassroots agencies in the UK as well as France, depending on, because if it's a virtual launch, then it might be an email. If it's a physical launch, then inviting people to attend, I think would be.
I have no idea. It's been decided quite recently that it was going to be in May. Literally 3 days ago, we thought we're going to launch it in May, but I don't have any detail on whether it's going to be physical or virtual launch.
Well, any way that people can get in contact with that. And then third point, I seem to be like on the but what's really important with work like this is it's very personal and also quite effective. Those who committed a crime looks like more appropriation of our agony. So to see people who are reflective of those who are purporting to represent, doing this kind of work is very important, because the diaspora globally faces, well, it's a war of attrition, but economic and social exclusion on all fronts. So this is an economic venture like any other. To involve those who are marginalised in this at the core is very important.
Anything else?
Thanks very much for showing the maps.
Can you stand up, please?
Could I ask about the distribution of the associations that you found in a sort of more micro-geographical sense?
Yeah.
Have you found many who are situated in what might be smaller towns or even rural areas? I mean, when you showed France, it seemed to me what the association reflected was a sort of maybe an old style thinking about where slavery impacted big cities, port towns.
Yeah.
And whereas, you know much more now about the widespread.
Yeah.
Sorry, I've got one more point. I just remember that. Apologies if I'm clicking up this. I'm using it quickly.
Can you stand up in a process?
Okay. I think this is an incredibly important piece of work, and language is very important. And for those from the grassroots community perspective, the word slavery is again about a power dynamic. Because for those who are subject to the crime, it wasn't a slave trade. It was never a trade for us. It was a crime. It was a Holocaust. So this is actually auditing a Holocaust map. It's not ordering. It depends on where you're coming from. If you're coming from the position of power, then it's about slavery. If you're coming from the position of maybe restoration and addressing the crime, it's not slavery, it's a Holocaust.
Oh, yes, okay. May I just follow up on that? Thank you for raising that, because...
Can you stand up, please, Ms. Shepherd?
Why?
He wants your camera.
I'm filming it. Because throughout this whole conference, I've been thinking that language deconstruction that we've been working on for such a long time doesn't seem to be reaching audiences. We keep repeating slaves,
discussion about what we want to see come out of this, and language change and the reconstruction of the narrative rendering of it is maybe the first thing they want to talk about. So I do want, I'm making a note of that because I do want us to come back to that when we move to what we should do. So thank you for that very important commentary. I think we're gonna.
Can I just add two comments right here, and then we can just to add to what the sisters have said, I think as well, it's particularly poignant or concerning when you have non-Africans as well using that language, because what you're doing is like you said, a power dynamic. So it's bad, it's not a good thing if our own people haven't learned the difference, and as Dr. Bruce just said. However, it's particularly concerning when a white person stands up and actually presents using the word slaves, slavery, because you're reinforcing it even more. So just to bear that in mind. We need to also not be afraid to talk about race and the impact of race.
Yes. And this is the last
Just to reinforce that point, it's from the textbooks that we're used to, from young days coming up, learning about our history, all the reference are from that. So we tend to parrot them or repeat them and duplicate them. But now we are thinking as a new generation, new thinkers, we have to correct that. And hopefully, like you said, that round table, this would be a point that came out, the sentiment.
So we really are, we are in the roundtable part of the program. So if you would, if we could just thank Lucy for that presentation. And the reason that, one of the reasons that Ecole wanted this to be presented to you, even though she's not here, is because she does want feedback. And so the information that you're giving, some of which Lucy has already noted, it's going to be useful. This is no attempt to try to co-opt the story, but to add to just to elaborate and make it available to more people. Francophone studies is what she does, and if you've got scholarship, particularly in that area, I think that is exactly what she's looking for. It's the thing that we two of us have in common. So we're definitely going to be looking at all of your comments. We are into the roundtable portion, so please continue with what you have to say now. Thank you so much. All right, so I'm going to ask some. I'm sorry. Well, we don't have a table. This is like when you're in Africa, I'm supposed to offer you water, but I don't have my calabash. So just know that you're welcome.
Maybe we're going to make the chairs.
Well, I was thinking of that very thing. So maybe we can do that. I would love that.
We're doing each other eyes. Yeah.